There is a moment most people never speak out loud. It happens in the most ordinary places. In the bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning, when the face looking back at you feels slightly off. Like a photograph of someone you used to know, taken from just the wrong angle. It happens in the middle of a conversation where everyone is laughing, and you are laughing too, perfectly on cue. But somewhere underneath, a part of you is watching from a slight distance, thinking very quietly, I don't recognize this person. It happens in the pause, the half second between what you almost said and what you chose to say instead. The version that was safer, the one that would not complicate anything, the one that protected the room from whatever the real answer might have cost. You have had that pause. Many times. And each time you carried on, as if nothing had been left behind. But something was. Carl Jung spent 40 years studying the architecture of the human interior, not as philosophers describe it, not as self-help simplifies it, but as it actually is, layered, contradictory, largely unknown even to the person it belongs to. He was not interested in making people feel better about themselves. He was interested in making them more real. And he understood, through his own years of interior descent, that these are not the same project. One of his most unsettling observations was this: most people pass through their entire lives without ever truly meeting themselves. The encounter with the real self demands something most of us will do almost anything to avoid. It requires facing the part of you that you decided long ago was not permitted to exist. Too loud, too hungry, too intense, too soft, too strange, too much or not enough, depending on which room you happened to be standing in when the feedback arrived. That part did not disappear. It went somewhere. It has been waiting there with a patience that only things with nowhere else to go are capable of. This is not a video about becoming a better version of yourself. It is about turning around and finally meeting what has been following you, not as an enemy, as yourself. Chapter 1. The Face You Learned to Wear. Think back to a specific kind of moment. Not to your childhood as an abstract period, not to the broad strokes you rehearse when someone asks about your upbringing. The moment you said something true and the room went cold. Not hostile, just cold. A degree or two of warmth quietly withdrawn, or the moment you expressed something real, a need, an emotion, a desire that felt important, and the person across from you looked away. Changed the subject, laughed but not with warmth, or the moment you were simply too much, too loud, too sensitive, too serious, and the feedback did not arrive as a lecture. It arrived as something quieter and more enduring, a slight decrease in approval, a look that you catalogued without language as, this part of you is costly, you were young. There were no words yet for what was being measured or what was being found wanting, but the body kept a record of it. It keeps a record of everything. And in the accumulation of those moments, a calculation was made. Not consciously. The way water calculates the path of least resistance. Something in you understood. And it made a decision. The decision was not conscious. It was made the way the body makes most of its decisions. Below language, in the part of you still oriented entirely around safety and belonging and warmth. Some parts of me will be shown, other parts will be kept. And so you began to edit, gradually, the way water shapes stone. The way you stop visiting a room until one day you realize you have completely forgotten it is there. You learned which parts of yourself played well in which rooms, when to turn the volume down on your anger, when to amplify your warmth, which desires were best kept private, which questions better left unasked. Jung called this architecture the persona, from the Latin for the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek theater, placed over the face, amplifying what the role required, concealing what the role did not. It was not a lie, exactly. It was a sophisticated, adaptive tool for navigating a world that had made its preferences very clear. Jung was careful to say that the persona is not the problem. He never asked people to simply abandon it, to stride into every social situation leading with raw, unfiltered truth. The persona has a legitimate function. It is how we move through institutions, how we meet strangers, how we protect the interior from exposure that would be neither useful nor safe. But the persona was designed to be worn, not to be fused with. And there is a difference, a significant difference, between a person who wears a role and a person who has become one. The problem Jung identified was never the persona itself. Every person needs a way to meet the world. Measured self-presentation is not pathology. It is how adults navigate the demands of shared existence. The problem is what happens across time. Somewhere between childhood and middle age, something quietly shifts. The role that was once something you wore becomes something you forget you are wearing. The presentation becomes the identity. The edited self becomes, in your own mind, the only self. And the original, the one that existed before the editing began, starts to feel like a stranger. Unfamiliar, slightly embarrassing. Like someone you have grown out of without being able to say when the growing happened. William James observed that human beings can alter the outer conditions of their life by altering the inner ones. He did not fully account for the reverse, that when the outer life hardens into habit, it begins to reshape the interior back. The role teaches the face to hold its shape. Eventually, you stop recognizing when you are performing, because the stage has come to feel like home. This is not a failure of character. It is the natural consequence of forgetting what you were before the world asked you to be something more convenient. And so there comes a kind of tiredness that no amount of rest repairs, the tiredness of maintaining a self that was never quite yours to begin with. You feel it in the car on the way home from a gathering where everyone told you how wonderful you were. You feel it after the meeting where you said exactly the right things, drove home, and wondered why none of it landed anywhere real. You feel it in the relationship where you are cherished, but somehow never fully seen. It is an exhaustion with no visible source. From the outside, everything appears to be working. Better than working. And that gap between the external appearance and the internal experience is itself draining, because you cannot explain it without sounding ungrateful, without appearing to reject the life you have spent so much of yourself constructing. Jung described this as the symptom of a soul abandoned in favor of a function, not a breakdown, a signal. A very quiet, very persistent signal asking you to turn around. Chapter 2. What lives in the dark? Jung said that the psyche does not simply forget what it buries. Whatever you exiled, whatever you shoved into the basement of your identity and locked the door on and walked away from it, did not dissolve. It did not sit quietly waiting to be called upon. It went underground, and it continued to live. Every part of yourself you deemed unacceptable was sent down to join what had been sent down before it. Jung called this collection the shadow, not a metaphor for evil, something more precise and more unsettling. The shadow is every part of you that was told, in ways large and small, explicit and implied, that it did not belong. It is not the dark, It is what you put into the dark. And the distinction matters, because what you placed there was not bad. It was real. It was simply unmanageable inside the life you were trying to maintain. So it went where unwanted things go. Not away, just below. Your rage, when rage wasn't permitted in the house you grew up in. Your grief, when grief was treated as a temporary inconvenience rather than a legitimate state of being. Your hunger for recognition, for love, for space, for more when hunger was called excessive or ungrateful. Your wildness, the unruly energy that wanted to run when every room required stillness. Your ambition, quietly reframed as arrogance. Your need, relabeled weakness by people who were themselves terrified of their own. Every time you received that message, spoken or unspoken, gentle or brutal, that part did not leave you. It sank, and there it grew heavier, more charged with each addition. Think of a river that has been dammed. The water does not disappear. It pools behind the wall, deepens and spreads. It builds pressure the dam was not designed to hold indefinitely. And eventually, always eventually, it finds other ways out. Through cracks too small to plan for. In surges that arrive without warning. This is the shadow expressing itself through what look like accidents. The anger that arrives disproportionate to its trigger. The grief that surfaces when nothing in the present warrants it. The pull toward people who carry the very qualities you have spent years convincing yourself you do not possess. The pattern in your relationships that keeps repeating, regardless of how different the new person seemed. The project you cannot begin. The apology that catches in your throat because giving it would require acknowledging something you have agreed not to acknowledge. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You think you are choosing. You think you are acting from reason and clarity. But a significant portion of what you call choice is the shadow moving through you, using the shapes available to it. The unconscious does not punish you for ignoring it. It simply continues to operate persistently, creatively, through every available gap in the story you have agreed to tell about yourself. And the shadow holds something else that no one prepares you for. It is not only the things you were ashamed of, it is also the things you were afraid to want. The desire for a life with more depth in a world that kept rewarding surfaces. The creative impulse that was never practical enough to pursue, that got called naive, then quietly stopped being mentioned at all. The capacity for joy so complete, so unself-conscious, that it felt almost inappropriate in the context of the responsible life you were building. The refusal, quiet, persistent, buried so deep you can barely hear it to accept that ordinary is enough. These things were buried too, not because they were dangerous, because they were inconvenient. And the longer they remain underground, the more they appear as symptoms. The person with tremendous creative energy who cannot begin anything. The deeply feeling person who has gone strangely numb. The one who longs for closeness but keeps everyone at a carefully managed distance. There is a practice that makes this concrete. Take a piece of paper. Write down 5 qualities in other people that reliably produce in you a response larger than the situation seems to justify. Arrogance, neediness, recklessness, self-display, coldness, whatever catches you off guard with the size of its charge. Then ask, without defending, where does this live in me? Not in theory, specifically. When have I been that? Where does that impulse appear quietly, sideways, in forms I find easier to accept? The person who cannot tolerate arrogance in others is often someone whose own ambition was buried so early it became unrecognizable even to itself. The one triggered by neediness has frequently sealed off their own longing behind the identity of being the capable one. This is not an exercise in self-criticism. It is a map. What triggers you in others is the shadow pointing at itself. And what you find there is not a flaw to correct. It is a part of you that has been trying to be recognized in the only language available to it. Chapter 3. The Walls of the Cage. The fears that keep you divided from yourself are not irrational. They were shaped by real experiences, real losses, real moments where the cost of being fully yourself turned out to be higher than you were prepared to pay. They arrive with credentials. They know your name. They know which argument will reach you. The first one sounds like this. If I let the buried parts speak the anger, the hunger, the wildness, I will damage something I cannot repair. I will become someone I do not want to be. You have translated your shadow into a threat. Consider what Jung was pointing toward. A person who is conscious of their own capacity for darkness is not more dangerous than one who is not. They are considerably less dangerous, because consciousness creates the possibility of choice. What lives in the unconscious acts without your permission. What you have genuinely faced can be genuinely governed. What you have never faced governs you. The shadow does not become monstrous when it is seen. It becomes monstrous only when it is never seen, when the only way it can exist is through the cracks you thought you had sealed. Jung made another observation that tends to go unremarked. He said the shadow contains not only what we fear, but what he called the golden shadow, the strengths, the gifts, the capacities we disowned because they were inconvenient, because they made others uncomfortable, because somewhere early on we received the message that being too bright was its own kind of burden. To face the shadow is not only to face what is dark. It is to reclaim what was always luminous and simply needed the courage of being seen. The second fear is quieter. The fear that authentic expression will cost you the relationships built upon the presentation. Some connections were made with the persona, with the self that was convenient and legible and never asked the room to expand. And some of those connections cannot survive the retirement of that role. Jung never minimized this kind of loss. But what this fear keeps concealed is the longing beneath it. The longing is not for approval. It is for witness. For someone to encounter not the edited interior, but the actual one and to remain. To not flinch. To not reach for a more comfortable version and offer that back instead. That longing has never been satisfied by becoming more convincing in the act. Every recognition the persona received landed somewhere adjacent to where you needed it to land. Close enough to register, never quite enough to fill the space. Because that space is not a gap in recognition. It is a gap in encounter. And the people capable of that encounter can only find you when there is something real to find. Deeper still, there is the fear of power. Many people, particularly those who watched power, wielded as a weapon in the families that formed them, made a quiet interior vow early on. Stay beneath a certain threshold of ambition, of visible authority, of unapologetic presence. Smallness is adjacent to goodness. Shrinking protects everyone. But there is nothing virtuous about a fire that has learned to burn only inward. The energy does not vanish when you refuse to let it move outward. It circulates. It surfaces as slow, corrosive resentment of watching others occupy spaces you have forbidden yourself. as the particular bitterness of performing gratitude for far less than you need, as sarcasm, quiet withdrawal, the subtle self-sabotage of things almost but not quite working. Power denied does not protect others. It redistributes the damage inward, and it has a secondary cost that goes unexamined. It models to the people around you that their own power is also something to be afraid of, that ambition is suspect, that taking up space is selfish, that the moral choice is always the smaller one. Integrated power is not domination, it is clarity, the capacity to say what is true without rehearsing it for days, to occupy what is yours without apologizing for the occupation, to move through a room without calculating how much space you are permitted to take. And the deepest fear of all, the one that makes every other possible. If the constructed self is allowed to dissolve, if the shadow is genuinely encountered, there will be nothing beneath it. The act will end, and the stage will be empty. You have edited yourself for so long that the original no longer exists. There is no self waiting to be discovered. Only absence. Jung understood this fear better than most. He spoke of the dissolution of the ego, the destabilization that occurs when the structures a person has built their identity around begin to fail. The ego cannot distinguish transformation from annihilation, the end of a form from the end of the self. It experiences both as death, but one is an ending, the other is a crossing. And what crosses is not diminished by the crossing, it is enlarged by it. The silence that follows the collapse of the old identity is not emptiness. It is the first honest quiet you have known in a very long time. And in that quiet, something becomes audible that the noise was covering. Jung described a practice he called active imagination, not visualization, not meditation in the usual sense, something more direct than either. You sit quietly. You close your eyes. You allow the part of yourself you most fear encountering to take shape as a figure. Give it a face, a posture, a way of standing in a room. Let it become specific enough to feel present. Then you ask it something. What did you need that I never gave you? What have you been trying to say while I was making sure no one could hear you? Write down what it says, without editing, without translating its answers into something more acceptable. What most people discover is almost never what they feared. The figure imagined as monstrous turns out to be exhausted. Young, sometimes the age you were when it was first sent away. Waiting to be asked a question no one had thought to ask before. What you buried was not a threat. It was a part of you that learned to wait. And waiting, unlike disappearing, means something is still available to be returned to. Chapter 4. The Death That Isn't Death. Jung called it individuation. The word is clinical. It does not prepare you for what the process feels like from the inside. It is the movement toward wholeness, the wholeness of containing more of yourself, the edited parts and the unedited ones, the parts that learned to function under pressure, and the parts that were never given the chance. Jung was precise about something easy to miss. He did not say, individuation makes you happy. He did not say it makes you peaceful or easier to be around. He said it makes you whole. And wholeness includes everything. The clear days and the ones that are not. The forward motion and the ones where you sit still and cannot seem to move. This is a more honest promise than most. It does not offer relief. It offers truth. And truth is the only material the interior can be built from. Individuation begins almost always in rupture, when the marriage ends, or the career that organized 20 years of your identity simply stops being available. When the body surfaces with information the mind has been refusing to receive. When the life you built stops fitting, not dramatically, just quietly, persistently, in a way that becomes harder and harder to explain away. Mircea Eliade, the Romanian historian of religion, spent his life studying initiation practices across dozens of cultures. He found one thing consistent beneath all their surface differences. Every tradition serious about transformation required a symbolic death. The initiate had to die to the old self before a new form could emerge. The old identity had to be treated as finished, mourned, released, sometimes marked on the body so that both the individual and the community understood. A crossing had been made. The person who came through the rite was not identical to the one who entered it. What the initiation granted was not a prize. It was permission. Permission to carry a larger self than the old role had allowed. Jung recognized this same structure inside every individual psyche. Individuation has its own momentum, its own timing, and it asks for the same thing every initiation has always asked for: the willingness to let the old form go, not to destroy it in bitterness, but to release it, to stop defending it as the only self permitted to exist. There is a practice that meets this crossing at the level the psyche understands, the level of gesture and symbol. Write a letter to the persona, not with contempt, not with the bitterness of someone who has discovered they were living a borrowed life, with genuine gratitude. Because it served you. It protected you through rooms you were not yet strong enough to enter as yourself. It got you here. Whatever criticism you might offer it now, it deserves acknowledgement first. Thank it for that. And then tell it clearly that something else is now permitted to exist alongside it. That the role it has been playing no longer needs to be everything. Then burn the letter, or bury it, or dissolve it in water. The method matters less than the intention. The unconscious responds to what you are willing to mark. It understands ceremony far better than argument. And something that has been holding its breath for a very long time is finally being given permission to breathe. The ego resists all of this with considerable intelligence. It finds very reasonable arguments for why now is not the right time. Why the people who depend on you need the stable version, not the honest one. Why the examined life is a luxury your particular circumstances do not permit. You have heard these arguments. Perhaps you made several of them this morning. They are not entirely wrong. Transformation is disruptive. Some arrangements cannot survive the person you are becoming, but the resistance cannot account for the cost of not becoming. Bronnie Ware, an Australian palliative care nurse, spent years recording what people said in the final weeks of their lives when the usual filters had come down. The most consistently reported regret across different backgrounds, different definitions of success, was this: they wished they had had the courage to live a life true to themselves, rather than the life others expected. A failure of self-return. The life that was theirs to live stayed largely unlived, because the cost of living it seemed too high right up until the moment when the cost of not living it became the only one that mattered. Notice what Ware's research found. It was not that people regretted their failures. It was that they regretted what they did not attempt. The roads not taken are not abstract. They become very specific in the silence of the final weeks. The ego's arguments speak in the language of care, of responsibility, of practicality. But beneath that language is often the architecture of fear. And the question worth sitting with: who are you protecting, and from what, by remaining exactly as you are? Individuation asks you to begin that return before the end makes it the only option. To see the dissolution of the old form, not as the loss of what you are, but as the clearing of what you never were. The lodgepole pine produces cones sealed by a resin so thick they cannot open under ordinary conditions. They can remain sealed for decades, waiting. Only extreme heat releases them. The fire is not an interruption of the forest's life. It is part of the forest's life, the event the forest was, in a precise sense, prepared for. The ecologist does not look at the burned ground and see failure. She sees the conditions under which the next generation of growth becomes possible. There is a version of this inside you. Parts of you have been waiting inside the particular heat of your own crisis, your burnout, your grief, your rupture for exactly this. The clearing. The moment when there is finally enough room for what was sealed to open. There are things in you waiting for a clearing. Not for more time. Not for the disruption to feel comfortable enough to attempt. That moment does not arrive. What they wait for is the willingness to let the overgrowth go. To stand in the clearing without immediately rebuilding what kept you from it. Standing in the clearing looks different for everyone. For one person, it is practicing saying no to something small just to feel what it costs and discover that the cost is survivable. For another, it is doing something purposeless, making something no one will see, or laughing at something undignified, or spending an hour on something the productive self would label a waste of time. Not because it serves a goal, because it is what you actually want to do. For another, standing in the clearing means letting the grief have 10 minutes, unmanaged, without the usual translation into something more composed. These are not dramatic acts. From the outside, they are barely visible. But from the inside, each one is a small declaration. This part of me exists. This part of me is permitted. The persona loosens not through a single moment of collapse, but through these quiet acts of reclamation, one at a time, accumulated over days and weeks and months into a life that gradually, incrementally, begins to resemble the person who was always underneath it. Chapter 5. What comes back? Most people expect that when this process begins, something comfortable will arrive. A clarity, a settling, a sense of having reached somewhere cleaner. What comes back first is different. What comes back is feeling, raw feeling, inconvenient feeling, the kind that cannot be managed from a careful distance. The grief stored so efficiently for so many years resurfaces and wants to be felt fully, not observed while you simultaneously manage everyone else's comfort. The anger redirected into productivity or background dissatisfaction returns as something more direct, pointing at what it was always pointing at. The longing translated into busyness becomes recognizable again as longing, with a specific object, a specific life, a specific version of yourself that wants to be inhabited. This can feel, for a time, like regression, like things are getting worse rather than better. They are not. They are getting true. And this is important. The discomfort that comes with meeting yourself is not the discomfort of something going wrong. It is the discomfort of something that has been held at a distance for a very long time, finally being allowed to come close. The body does not know how to receive that without some trembling. Neither does the mind. But trembling is not collapse. It is the nervous system recalibrating around a larger truth than the one it has been managing. James Hollis, one of the most careful contemporary interpreters of Jung, describes this not as healing in the conventional sense where broken things are repaired and returned to prior functioning, but as enlargement. The capacity of the self expands to include more of itself, more of the range, more of the territory that was sealed off. You become harder to predict, less available for roles that required only a portion of you. Some people in your life will find this disorienting. They will reach for the self they preferred, reliably contained, reliably pleasant, limited to the dimensions they had built their understanding around. And you will feel, in those moments, the old gravity, the pull toward reduction, toward becoming easier again, more manageable, more like before. That pull is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that something real is emerging, something the old arrangements were never designed to accommodate. Hollis writes that the question that matters is not what others want from us, or what we think we should be, but what the soul, the deeper self, is actually asking of us. That question is rarely comfortable. It does not come with a clear answer, but it persists. And the longer it goes unanswered, the louder it tends to speak through the symptoms you have been trying to manage. What also returns, more slowly, is a kind of knowing that does not require permission to be trusted. The body begins to register what the mind has spent years overriding. The knowledge that arrived before the analysis, before the consultation with what others will think, that knowledge becomes audible again. You start to notice when you are saying yes and meaning something else entirely. When a decision that looks correct on paper sits in your chest like a stone. When something fundamental in you is pointing quietly toward the door. These signals were always there, speaking the whole time. The persona had learned to translate them into more socially acceptable outputs. Compliance, adaptation, the reasonable thing. When the persona loosens, the signals surface. Pascal wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant something precise. The noise we fill our lives with is not accidental. It is a strategy, a way of ensuring the deeper signals never quite get through. When the noise thins, the signals surface. And with them comes the recognition that the question you have been living inside what is permitted was never the right question. The right question is simpler. What is true? And what does the truth require of you? None of this arrives as transformation. It arrives as small returns. A moment when you say something true in a room where the easier version was available, and the room does not collapse, and neither do you. An acknowledgement of a need instead of quietly redirecting it into something more presentable. The actual feeling rather than the acceptable approximation of it. These do not feel like milestones. From the inside, they feel almost ordinary, a little uncomfortable, a little exposed. But they accumulate. And accumulation is how the shadow integrates. Not through one breakthrough conversation, not through a single night of clarity where everything rearranges itself into sense. Through the patient, repeated practice of choosing truth over convenience, depth over performance, your actual self over the self that keeps things smooth. It is like finding, in a house you thought you knew entirely, rooms sealed off so long ago you had stopped counting them among the rooms. You open one. It is dusty. The light falls differently in here than in the rooms you have been living in. And it is strange, and it is yours. And there is something in it that you have been missing for longer than you had words for the missing. Something that did not leave. Something that waited. With more patience than you thought anything could wait for a door to open. Jung wrote, late in his life, that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Note the word he chose. A privilege. Something not everyone claims. Something that requires not only the right conditions, but a particular kind of courage. The quiet, sustained, daily courage of refusing to finalize yourself before you are finished. Of staying genuinely open to what is still trying to emerge. Even when the emergence is inconvenient. Even when what is emerging does not match the identity you have spent years maintaining and that others have come to rely upon. Rilke wrote that we must assume our existence as broadly as we in any way can. Everything, even the unheard of, must be possible in it. He was not writing about optimism. He was writing about the refusal to make yourself smaller than what is actually trying to live through you. That refusal is not selfishness. It is the most honest thing a person can offer the world. Because a person who has not met themselves cannot truly meet others. The connection they offer is real, but it is between two personas standing at a polite distance from each other, both of them performing the approximation of closeness. The work of shadow integration is, in this sense, not only personal. It is the work of becoming genuinely available to the people and the life you are trying to inhabit. The actual self, finally present, finally here. There is a version of you that has been waiting, with the kind of patience that only exists because it has no choice but to exist. A more complete version, one that holds the shadow alongside the light, the buried alongside the presented, the grief alongside the capacity, the longing alongside the functioning, the things you were taught to conceal alongside the things you were trained to show. That version is not waiting for the right time. It is not waiting for the circumstances to align or the risk to diminish to a level where the return feels safe. That level does not arrive. It is waiting for a different kind of attention than it has received so far. The kind that is willing to turn around, to look at what has been following you, to sit with it long enough to recognize its face. Jung understood that this recognition is not a single event, but an ongoing practice. The shadow is not a problem to be solved once and then filed away. It is a dimension of yourself that accompanies you for life, asking, not demanding, asking to be included in the person you are, and to understand that what has been following you was never a threat. It was everything you stopped looking for right before you found it. There is a question this video will not answer for you. It cannot. Anything that claims it can is offering something that will not hold. But it can offer you the question, the one that lives beneath the noise of everything you have agreed to keep yourself occupied with. What part of yourself have you been waiting for the right time to return to? The one you stopped visiting. The one you agreed, in some unspoken negotiation with the demands of your life, to come back to later. Later. When things settle. When there is more time. When the conditions are finally right. The conditions do not become right on their own. They become right when you decide that the return matters more than the reasons not to make it. The work of the shadow is not finished in a sitting. It is the ongoing practice of turning toward the parts of yourself that have been waiting in the dark, not to fix them, not to resolve them into something tidy, to let them be seen, and to discover that being seen is the only thing they ever actually needed. The door is already there. It has always been there. It was never locked from the outside, only ever held shut from within. Everything you are looking for starts where you stopped looking.